If that makes it into the podcast, I don't know what kind of show we're running, but
Education and resources to the trans community. Hello and welcome to Transgender Zone. You know, when I was a little kid, I used to just tie t-shirts on my head all day long and walk around the house, pretend that it was long hair. And I would draw googly eyes or glue googly eyes onto popsicle sticks and glue long hair onto it and stuff because I just wanted dolls so badly. I wanted long hair so badly. And I mean, it's pretty easy to tell early on, for me at least, that I was meant to be a girl, that I'm transgender. And I think a lot of people have those experiences. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. So hello, viewers. Hello, everyone at home. Welcome back to another episode of the TZone podcast.
today we're going to be sharing stories from our community members. So if you don't know, TZone is an online platform for trans folks where you can connect with other people from around the world, find resources, get coaching. And so we're going to be sharing stuff from the community, specifically around when and how they knew that they were trans.
Yeah, and while each person's experience of this is going to be completely unique and their own, there are some common through lines that we found while going through, of course, my own experience as a trans woman, and also the experiences of our community members. And some of those are early childhood awareness, like I was just saying, knowing early on that there's something different, something off. Experimentation, again, those t-shirts on the head, experimentation with gender identity and expression, and a lot of moments of clarity. I'm holding myself back from getting into all of these right now because I have a lot to say on all of these points, but there are a lot of through lines. What are some other ones, Chris?
Some of the other ones are emotional pain, so specifically emotional pain of dysphoria. We also saw this burden of suppression, so trying to keep it in rather than letting it out at different parts of your life. We also saw that dreams and imagination were a refuge for a lot of folks, which I was interested to see.
Yeah.
That came up a lot.
It really did. That was an interesting one because I've experienced it too, but I didn't realize that was like a through line. So we're going to touch on that. We also have talked about with our members, like the limitations imposed by growing up in certain eras.
Yep.
We have a large portion of people that we serve are people that transition later in life and have talked about maybe they grew up in a more conservative area, and that is all tied together with the immense relief they have felt when they've been able to embrace themselves and embark on their transition. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. These stories span from decades of people who realized that they were trans early on and took action. And I mean, myself, I transitioned at age 14. We have stories of people who realized maybe in college, people who realized when they're 50 or 60, and they have a wife and kids, and not only just realized, but made the decision to accept themselves and embark on this journey. So we're kind of covering all of those bases in this episode.
Yeah, and we're going to be sharing specific quotes from our community members on what they said. And like you said, a lot of people knew early on, but they didn't make steps until later. And so we're going to be sharing some of the feelings, experiences, stories from folks. And so I'm excited to jump in.
Yeah, you know what? Let's just jump right in. So grab a snack, strap in, and let's get started.
All right. So the first is early childhood awareness. So many members knew from a very early age, whether or not they took action on it, even like preschool age, like pre-10 years old, they knew. And so you were just mentioning that for you, that was very much so the case.
It absolutely was. I mean, even when I was a little kid, I only had female friends. And of course, this doesn't mean you're trans. You can have all of these things and not whatever. But I knew early on that something was amiss, that there was something wrong. So I only had female friends. I only was interested in princess, whatever. I have two older siblings, and I was definitely the most feminine out of them. And I have an older sister, and I was just obsessed with Sharpay and High School Musical and The Little Mermaid and Pocahontas, Mulan, all of that. I think something a lot of us experience is the discomfort that we experience in our youth as we start to mature, as we start to maybe face puberty or even just entering school, realizing that things are going to be broken up between boys and girls. That if you're a boy, you can't wear a certain thing. If you're a girl, you're not supposed to be doing this. And that's when a lot of people start to realize that there's this misalignment. So we have some really interesting stories from our members. If you don't mind, I'll hop in on the first one.
Yeah, go right ahead. And these come from members specifically at transgenderzone.com.
Yes, these are our TZone members. And we have asked as well if it's okay if we share their first names. Anyone who does not want their first name shared can request that. But yeah, so let's just jump in. So Heather says, quote, I noticed there was something different about me at the age of 7 or 8. I have 3 sisters, one of which at the time was doing her hair, makeup in the bathroom. She asked me if I wanted to have my hair, nails done, and have some light makeup applied. I jumped at the chance to do so without really thinking about it. I remember going up and seeing my mom do her makeup in the mirror. I mean, my older sister's kind of a tomboy. But
she doesn't wear makeup now.
No, ever. She's a lesbian. But seeing my mom like apply her makeup in the morning and do her like hair. I also remember watching her blow dry her hair, and I had short hair and I wanted her to blow dry mine. So she would just like be doing hers and then turn it over at me and blow me and then back at her. And it was really cute.
Meanwhile, in high school, you were using a blow dryer every morning.
Oh yeah.
Spiking the hair out even before transition. Like in middle school, the scene spike.
Yeah, I know. Like that was, if you look up like scene kid hair crown, I had that every single day in school.
Every day. So we'll read another one, and this is from Paige. Some of my earliest memories are colored by confusion and quiet realizations. For me, I never felt inherently different, not in the ways others implied. I remember preschool vividly puzzled by how my sister was treated differently. I'd ask why, and they'd tell me because she's a girl and you're a boy. But I didn't understand. I'd tell them, but I'm a girl too. They didn't like that. Eventually, I stopped fighting it. It wasn't working and it wasn't worth it. I learned to keep quiet, stay small, and stay out of the way.
That's so sad. I think a lot of us experience that where we just have to, we're like, okay, I guess I'll shut up because no one likes me. Because when you don't fit, like the nail that sticks out gets hammered down.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
especially in schools that are very much so male and female coded, where it's male and female bathrooms, male and female teams, groups, whatever it might be. They're split locker rooms, whatever it might be.
And God forbid someone assigned male at birth exhibits any sign of femininity. And if they do, they're in physical danger. So it's ridiculous. So yeah, no, Paige, I feel you on that. Tanya says, I knew by the time I was 8. It was 1980 then. And that decade wasn't so kind to the queer community. Girl, we know. We know it. I learned to keep my true self hidden out of fear of being beaten, mainly by my father. Even before that, the signs were all there, though. Wanting girls' toys for Christmas, yes. Being disappointed when I got boys' stuff, except bikes. A new bike is always good. That's so true. I hung out with my girl cousins more than the boys, and even now I'm closer to the girls of my family. My best friends through life, mostly girls. Me as well. Yeah. And what's interesting too is that, like I said, these things don't necessarily make you trans. Like just because you have female friends doesn't make you trans, or you feel comfortable around women doesn't make you trans. It's these feelings of having to hide who you actually are.
Yeah.
Like you, for example, Christopher, you grew up around a lot of women. You grew up around some really toxic, horrible men, and also around some wonderful, strong women.
Very bad men.
And you made the decision to let these women influence your life. And
absolutely.
At no point, correct me if I'm wrong, but at no point, at least around them, did you feel like you had to hide who you were, hide your true self?
Absolutely. I felt accepted by the women in my life, and I felt nurtured by the women in my life, but at no point did I think, ooh, I'm not a boy. I might have thought I'm not like the other men in my life because they were awful, or I'm not like the other boys because I wasn't as rough, or I wasn't. But never once did I feel like by being a boy in a woman's space, I was supposed to be a woman. I just felt like I was a boy that happened to be more like the women, and therefore I was able to share that space and, talk about issues and talk about more sensitive topics and whatever without them feeling threatened. But never once did I feel like I'm in the wrong body. I just felt like I don't identify as much with the men in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. There are also a lot of trans women who had mostly male friends. I know a trans woman myself who was kind of a gamer, is still kind of a gamer, and had a lot of gamer guy friends. And she transitioned. She's still friends with all those guys. And thankfully, they're all still very supportive of her. But, like I said, just because you have female or male friends doesn't mean one thing or another. But what Tanya's describing, I think a lot of us have experienced. And that's sort of one of the through lines that we kind of have here in realizing that you're trans.
And I think it's really interesting too, as we move on to the next quote. There's a lot of conversation about sisters, like having sisters and seeing what they do and being like, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, as Aria mentioned here, I have known I wanted to be one of my sisters all my life. I was the autistic child in the family. I have a twin sister. I was always envious of her and my two older sisters. I thought God had made a mistake with making me someone to be laughed at. I used to try and find what I did wrong to upset God so much.
That just breaks my heart.
Gosh, it's so hard to read that, but it's real.
To Aria and to the listener directly, just, I mean, almost on a little bit of a side note, but on thinking God made a mistake, while I am personally relatively anti-religion, I do believe that if there is some sort of higher power, that there wasn't a mistake, that I was made to be a trans person. It wasn't a mistake that he put me in a body assigned male at birth. He did that on purpose. She did that on purpose, whatever, to progress the collective consciousness of people, to be able to lead in that avenue of humanity. And I just think, I don't know, I think it's worth considering that people love to say crazy evangelical Christian
super
nationalists.
right-wing
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They love to say God doesn't make mistakes. What do you want to correct God's mistakes? That's not what people are doing. They're living their authentic lives. And if you don't think God made someone to be themselves, think again.
In the same way as folks would say, you could convert someone from being gay into being straight. It's you are born that way. And I think the thing is, too, is that, especially when you look at cultures like Native American culture and the two-spirit, the idea of the two-spirit, and that being the sort of person that you can listen to their wisdom because they blend both sides of the gender paradigm.
Yep.
It's very uniquely American and Western to say you are a mistake for being this way. A lot of other cultures say you have inherent wisdom in a way that the rest of us don't have because we're not like that. And so they can blend the worlds of the male and the female, masculine and the feminine. There's no reason to say it's a mistake. Some cultures worship people like that, really just hold them in high esteem.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about that, but we'll move on to the next one. So to cap off the knowing early on, Ebony has said, Ebony's one of her moderators, love Ebony. And she said, since childhood, I knew something was off and that my body didn't quite fit. I was the oldest and have 3 younger sisters and really was never okay being treated differently from them. Having to play with the boys, being given different clothes and toys, having to get my hair cut, having to watch different TV shows. I never understood why. And I feel the same way. I used to cry every haircut. Haircut, I would cry. I would cry and cry and cry. And the poor stylist would be like, what did I do? She didn't do anything. I just wanted long hair. Just imagine.
Traumatizing that poor stylist.
This poor kid never shuts up. Just me crying every single time. That absolutely is so true. And I would see my female friends, one thing I do remember to cap off the early childhood, realizations is that my female friends were having sleepovers. And very early on when I was very young, that was okay because I was still 6 or something. And then as I got to maybe 10, it wasn't okay. And all of a sudden I had to leave the party early and all the girls got to stay there and have I was the only boy there because I fit in with all of them and I would have to leave early. And sometimes it was because of their rule, but most of the time it was because my parents were like, well, you're a boy, you can't do that. And I just didn't get it because I was like, what are you talking about? We're going to be braiding each other's hair and talking about Hello Kitty. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just something early on that you start to realize that there is that separation and you start to realize maybe there's something that doesn't quite fit.
And I think it's a good call to parents as well and to folks that have younger folks that might be trans or showing symptoms maybe and be like, oh, maybe this person actually is trans. Just because they don't fit in with their gender doesn't mean that they're trans. But if they're showing symptoms of that they're in the wrong body or that they don't understand why they're not being treated the same and why they can't do the same things, that's probably a bigger sign for you to be like, maybe we should get maybe we should have a therapist look over what's going on.
Well, and that's like, and I, you know, not to get too far off the topic here, but I saw a clip from a podcast interview with Sharon Osbourne, and she was saying, you know, oh, the trans thing, no one's actually trans. And she was like, back in my day, if you were weird and didn't fit in, you were just a goth. You were just a goth, but now they're saying you're trans. That's not the case. Hey, there are still goth people.
There are goth people that are trans? There are goth people who aren't.
Period. But that's still there. The reason why we're seeing more trans folks is that people are okay with being themselves and accepting themselves. But yes, just because you don't fit in with one certain thing doesn't mean you're trans or not trans. It's all a journey. It's all a journey. Like, just...
Oh, yeah. If we had folks in our community that have transitioned later in life, if this is a representative sample of folks around the world, which it is, there would have been so many more trans folks back then if people just felt like they were safe enough to come out.
Yeah.
So it's not that there's magically more trans people. It's just they're like, oh, I don't have to be in fear for my life.
I mean, like Tanya, hello, one of our members, I just a couple notes ago
genuine fear.
Said she was afraid of coming out in the 80s because it wasn't safe. And that's the case. Like, it's still not safe. I mean, obviously now with the current administration, it's a whole other conversation. But that's the reason why. So that covers the early childhood acknowledgement of your gender identity. So let's go into gender expression and role experimentation. So some of our members have frequently gravitated towards clothing or activities or accessories that affirm their personal gender. So for me, that would be female. And that goes back to, like I said, the tying the t-shirt around the hair. And I used to... Of course, as I said, I had only female friends, and I would like raid their closets. I would ask them, like, can I please like take that shirt home? Can I please take that shirt home? And I would sneak little pieces of clothing in, or like sneak it on the bus. I would like have tights on underneath my pants, and I'd like take them off and put stuff on the bus. But so these weren't just preferences. It wasn't just, oh, I like that shirt. I like that it has a wolf on it or something. It was a lot deeper than that, and it brought me comfort. And it brought me authenticity. There were moments where it could make me feel that I wasn't lying, that it would align my outer presentation with who I was. So it wasn't just like playing dress up. I was putting these things on because I wanted to, and it really pained me to take it off at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting because I had the exact opposite experience as a cis person, right? Of like, I would see my older cousins, my male cousins wearing like streetwear back in the early 2000s when it was like skateboarding clothes. I would see them be like, I want to wear the clothes that he's wearing. And I'd take his hand-me-downs and stuff. And so it's so interesting to hear that like you would have had the same sort of experiences with your cousins. And we'll see here too that a lot of folks had older folks in their life that were the other gender for the time that they were talking about. And they were like, can I have that?
Yes, exactly.
Can you give me that, please? So Heather wrote, so from the age of 10-ish, I've been trying on women's clothing and makeup off and on. I think what really was a good indicator was when I was 10, 11-ish. I was flipping through the old JCPenney catalog. I came across the bridal portion of the catalog. I remember looking at both of the men's and women's clothing outfits and thinking men's clothing are so dull, but these bridesmaids and wedding dresses are a lot more colorful and expressive. I came across one bride's dress. Maybe it was just the model or the way she carried herself, even though she was just posing. I thought to myself, if I ever got married, I would want to wear something like she's wearing.
Oh, I feel that so hard, like looking at the catalogs and being like, I wish that was me, and seeing all the bridal dresses and the wedding dresses. And if you haven't already, go ahead and watch my wedding video about our wedding, because it was really fantastic and magical, about blah, 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 blah. You already know.
Sappy love stuff.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay. But I really feel that because I would watch like these fairy tale weddings and the Disney princess of it all, watching them get married in their big like cupcake dresses and just watching them get all dolled up and gussied up. It just made me so happy. And I never felt that connection. Like I would look at the men in the magazine and be like, that's my Prince Charming. It wasn't ever like, I want to look like that. That was like, wow, like he's cute versus I want to look like that.
You know? I would see it and be like, I like the suit.
Yes, exactly.
That's a great suit. Yeah.
Exactly. So moving on, Bryn said, I remember always feeling different as a child. Instead of playing football with the boys, I wanted to play house with the girls. Real. I remember every birthday or every time I saw the first star of the night, I would always make the same wish. I wished I would wake up as a girl. Oh my God. But it was the 70s and 80s, and I didn't really have the knowledge or vocabulary to know that I was transgender. That's so sad. Bryn, that's so sad. It's wonderful and heartwarming to hear that you're where you are now and living your authentic truth. I love to hear that. But that's so relatable, I think, to not only to a lot of our members, but to myself as a trans person. I would wish that I would wake up and be a girl and wake up. I mean, even post transition, I would wish that I would just be able to wake up and be totally done, like completely in the right body, not even be trans, just be a cis girl, and that's it. And that's just not possible. But I think that's something that we all have experienced, Bryn. You're not alone there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting, too, is not having the vocabulary. That is a very common experience that we've seen of like, and you might say, I wish I would wake up as a girl, but you wouldn't know how to say, I want to transition genders. Like, I was born in the wrong body and I'm going to transition. But it's interesting because for you, it took somebody else in your family saying that they were trans for you to go, oh my God.
We can switch.
Wait, we could switch? we could do that?
That's exactly what it was.
But back then, no one talked about it.
And I mean,
70s,
when
80s,
I came out, it was like, I don't know, 2012 or something. And at the time, I felt like I didn't have the vocabulary for it, let alone in the 70s and 80s. And yes, of course, there have been trans people for long before then, and including in the United States, but it wasn't talked about. It certainly wasn't encouraged. In the 70s and 80s, if you were not wearing 3 items of clothing associated with your sex assigned at birth, you would be picked up and arrested and thrown in jail for solicitation.
Yeah. In the same way that we're seeing in the United States, there's this attempted suppression of, or redefinition of being trans. Like back then, it was just like, no, you can't talk about that. Mm-hmm. You're not allowed to. And folks that are uncomfortable with it are always going to try and make it quiet. Mm-hmm. The problem is, though, is that when it's quiet, people suffer in silence for most of their lives.
Well, that's what they want.
That's what they want, yeah.
That's what they want. But that's why I'm so glad that we do have the vocabulary now, Bryn, to put a name to it and be able to say, actually, maybe this is how I feel. And that's what's so great about labels. A lot of people focus too hard on the idea of like, well, what's my label? What's this? Or focus too hard on like, why does everyone want to label? Everyone's labeling things nowadays. You don't need any label, but it helps people understand who they are and who you are. If you can say, if you're like, I feel this way, I don't feel like I'm right in my body, I'm so unhappy, I wish I was born a girl, blah. If you realize that that is a thing, that the word for that is being transgender, you can take steps to fix that. In the same way that if you are always having mood swings and you're really feeling manic for days, weeks at a time, and then you're crashing and feeling depressed, having the word for it, bipolar, that's a label, but you're still bipolar whether you have the label or not. That just gives you the ability to treat it well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It builds a treatment plan. And part of being trans is, for a lot of folks, deciding to make steps to transition. And so it's about finding the right path rather than, diagnosing is the first very small step of a longer journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So another one of our members, Ellie, wrote, I remember as a kid always being told I was a girl, and I always defended myself for the longest time. I tried my sister's clothing and always wanted to do what society deemed to be feminine things. I never really thought anything about it until I got older, but I always hated my genitalia and the body hair that men have. That's a big thing.
Yes.
Puberty and kind of like that's a big part of it.
Yes. I also would be called a girl all the time, and I'd be like, well, and it was meant to be an insult, of course.
Funny enough, they were right.
And when I was a kid, it kind of was an insult because I was like, no, but it's because I didn't know what being trans was. But no, I always, we'll keep it relatively PG so we can put most of it on here. If you want the uncensored, go ahead and go to transgenderzone.com.
That's correct.
But I just would wake up in horror that I would get body hair, that I would get, because my dad is very hairy. And I was so afraid. Thank God I didn't get that gene, or, I caught it before that happened. But I just was so uncomfortable with all of that. And I remember just feeling so disgusted with what was between my legs, and like going to the beach was always just traumatic. Doing anything that would show my body and anything but like baggy clothing or like fully clothed just made me so incredibly uncomfortable. Yeah, so I feel you, Ellie. That is a very common thread.
Yeah.
So next up on gender expression and role experimentation is Gwen. And Gwen said, I can vividly remember being 12 and fantasizing about girls or evil doctors transforming me into a woman. I never shared it with anyone and had no idea what to make of it. I thought it was a normal part of starting puberty. Later in high school, I used to pay particular attention to what girls were wearing, how they wore their hair, the way they walked, and I just remember feeling jealous, but I didn't know why.
Yeah.
Feeling jealous and not understanding why is such a big thing, because it wasn't like my female friends had a better life than me. They didn't have a better home than me or better family than me. I mean, maybe they, all
maybe, but
any
not
of those
the point.
things,
Yeah.
but that's not what I was envious of. I didn't know what it was. I was envious that like they could wear these things, that they could go to ballet, that they could watch this movie and talk about it with their family and not get made fun of, that they could, again, my family's supportive, but you know what I mean? Or just any of that, that I had this like seething jealousy because they were, especially when puberty hit, they were maturing and they were all excited about each new day, what was waiting for them. And I was just in the most severe dread every single time I would wake up. And as I would watch them progress in one direction, I was progressing in the wrong direction. And it just, every single day that passed was harder and harder. So Gwen, you're not alone there. A lot of us have had that experience, and hopefully we can overcome that jealousy and form our own identities as women.
Yeah.
So with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and we will come back with moments of clarity and realization. So when it comes to developing your identity as a trans person, there comes a moment of realization, a moment of clarity where you're like, oh, that's what's going on.
Yeah,
Like,
I've heard the term egg crack.
Yes, that's
Before,
a very common term, is when your egg cracks. And I actually hadn't heard that until just a few years ago. I don't know if that's more recent or if maybe I was out of the loop on that one. Actually, the first time I heard about it was from our vocal coach over at TZone, Micah, who's phenomenal. She's such a great vocal coach.
Yeah.
But I had private sessions with her before we ever made TZone. And she said, oh, there were eggs cracking left and right because of 2020. And I was like, what? Like eggs? You mean the $12 a dozen things right now?
The home mortgage for a box of eggs?
You mean the expensive things at the grocery store that you can buy one of? Yeah, no. But so for most people, there was a moment where there was this crystal clear realization of like, oh my gosh, this is who I am. This is who I'm meant to be. And for some people, it's a quote. For some people, it's a movie, a moment in time, something someone said to them. So for me, I started out assuming that I must be gay, like a gay male, because I was very, very feminine. I didn't know that being trans was a thing at the time. And I liked boys. I also liked girls. But I was like, I mean, I'm very feminine. I like boys. And when I'm with girls, I was forced to be the masculine one. Surprise, surprise. and I was just so uncomfortable and I didn't like it. And I was so uncomfortable with my body too. I was like, okay, well, I must just be gay. And so I dabbled in being gay. I was like, well, maybe I'm just gay. And that did not help at all. I mean, hello, gay men like men. And that's not who I was. Like, I just didn't feel that. And it wasn't even about being with men. It was the experience of feeling feminine is what I was missing. I was missing that key piece. And when I first heard, really, like I had maybe heard like, I heard of like a transvestite, or I heard of like drag queens, cross-dressers, but I didn't really know that you could transition. I grew up watching, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with androgenetics, but it was an old school collab channel. Do you remember that? There were like a lot of collab channels on YouTube where like every day of the week, a different person would post a video. And androgenetics was a collab channel where androgynous boys, most of them transitioned later, would
Red
come
flag.
on and talk about living life as a boy that wore makeup and hair extensions. And I was like, I love this. This is who I am. And then I realized that you could transition. And I was like, oh, okay. So I can be Princess Jasmine. I was like, so
I am the Little Mermaid.
Oh, so you can, oh, okay. Got it. So that was kind of how that worked for me.
And I find it interesting, too, that you mentioned that you didn't want to be with a man as a man. You wanted to be a woman dating a man or a woman dating a woman.
Yes.
And that's a huge distinction.
Yes, it absolutely is. I just, and it's not even just I wanted to be in a more feminine role. It's that I wanted to be a woman. Like, yes, you can be a gay man and be more feminine and wear makeup and hair and whatever and identify as a cis man. That's great. At the end of the day, I was just deeply unsatisfied with who I was. And it wasn't I was young, so I wasn't doing this, but like, it wasn't who I was going to bed with. It was who I was going to bed as. That me, at the end of the day, in my head, I was feeling misaligned. It didn't matter if I was with a boy or a girl. It didn't change. At the end of the day, I was still Victoria. And I realized when I found out that you could transition from one of my family members coming out, I then was like, we can switch. And so I immediately was like,
I'm jumping on that train.
searching everything. I was
subscribed.
searching everything. And I did a lot of research and talked with my therapist for a while before coming out. And that's when my egg cracked. So we're going to jump into a few stories here.
Yeah.
And I figure I'll just start us out, honestly, with Olivia. And actually, hi, Olivia. That was going to be my name. So a little brief story time. My first choice name was Astrid. Beautiful name, but not for me. I said it to my mom and she goes, no, next name. And I went, okay. And I chose Victoria. And that's a story for another time. But if I were born female, the plan was that my name was going to be Olivia. And
your parents were going to name you Olivia.
yes, if I had been born female, my parents had planned on naming me Olivia. So I really thought about that. But there was an Olivia in my school that I did not like. So I didn't do that. But you're wonderful, Olivia. Anyway.
Victoria hates your name, Olivia. I'm kidding.
So Olivia says, this is definitely something I struggle with and is awkward, but I remember being a kid at 11 and friends sending me this very crude animation of the first instance of seeing that kind of content ever in my life. Everyone laughed and moved on, but my immediate thought was, I wish I was her. That's so real.
I mean, it's just real, yeah.
After hearing this quote, trans people don't want to be trans either. They just want to be the other gender. It kind of hit me, oh, is that what this is? Oh, no. That's what this is. That's so real. And yes, that is true. That's true. I don't want to be trans. I don't, hello.
It'd be a lot easier if you weren't,
I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of the journey that brought me to where I am today, but I don't, like, if I could wake up tomorrow and be a cis girl, obviously, I transitioned because I wanted to be female. I wish that I was born female. I wasn't. And I took the steps to get to where I am today, and I got to live as a female. And that's fine. But my choice wasn't to be trans. My choice was to transition to be a girl. So.
Absolutely, yeah. And if there was a scientific way where you could just wake up in the morning, that would be the way that everybody would take.
My God.
Or at least binary trans folks. But the point is that, like, that would be the goal.
Is that what Trace Lissette did?
That's called money.
Trace, give me the substance.
That's called having money.
Give me the substance, Trace. Okay, moving on to Rin.
So moving on to Rin, Rin said, it was an admission to myself when I'd mentally exhausted every other possibility I could think of. It crept up on me. When in the quiet of COVID and my divorce, 1,000 different little signs I had buried and ignored bubbled back up. But when I really knew, when mentally I crossed the point of no return, was when I remembered this moment from Ghost in the Shell.
Love it.
You talk about redefining my identity. I want to guarantee that I can still be myself. There isn't one. Why would you wish to? All things change in a dynamic environment. Your effort to remain what you are is what limits you. I realized I wanted to transition so badly that I'd forego that guarantee. Wow.
That is so true. And I mean, for some people, you kind of are giving that up, and it might not be your identity, but a lot of people are risking giving up their family, giving up their
Really though, yeah.
partners, their jobs, their housing in order to live the life that they have now. And I mean, some of our members share that. Some of our members share, like, I came out to my wife and we have a kid and she didn't want to be with me anymore. So now we co-parent and her mom hates me. And like, it's tough.
It'd be complicated.
But you know what is a lot more difficult and complicated is living a lie.
We've heard so many stories on TZone of folks that, you know, earlier on in life, that are older in life now, that kind of maybe around like 30 or 40 started, and then they decided not to because of some of the pressures from other folks.
Yeah.
And then around like 50, got back into it because they were like, no, it's not a matter of like, I can live not as myself. It's not an option. I have to do this for myself.
And it's the level of there's no other option that I think people don't understand. I think people, like cis people in particular, think that trans people are like, oh, I feel weird, I want hormones. That's not how it works.
Yeah, no.
Transition is the last resort, and physicians know that as well, that it takes therapy, which is why you have to be in therapy before getting hormones. You have to be in therapy before getting procedures. You have to be on hormones for a certain amount of time before getting procedures. Like, there are a lot of things in place to keep you as the patient safe, at least here in America. And it's that beyond a reasonable doubt, knowing that this is what I have to do in order to live my life. No one's just on a whim deciding, you know what, I'd like to just uproot my entire life. Like,
yeah, for sure. And even if you're on informed consent version of HRT, you still have to, they still have to tell you, like, this is what you're doing. Like, this is very serious, right? I mean, nobody's going, you know what, let's make my life harder. Let's make life real hard. Let's transition and make everything so much more difficult. It's just like, no, there's no option. It's just what has to be done. And now, granted, not everybody's trans, but for the folks that are, it's not an option.
That's right. Next up, we have Cassandra. And Cassandra says, well, ever since I could remember, I always knew I was different. That there was something about me that was off, but I could never quite tell what it was. It wasn't until middle school when I found out what it means to be transgender. It fascinated me. It made me wonder, could that be me? For years, one of the main items on my bucket list was, quote, present as a woman for a day. Oh my gosh, ambitious, by the way, presenting for a woman as a day. Presenting as a woman for a day. We actually just recently had one of our members come on and say that it was her first time out, like out in public in full girl mode, like all day long. And she got compliments and ma'amed and she and heard all of that. And that it just is so magical to hear that. But that first day, that first step is a lot. So yeah, I mean, Cassandra, I think that checks out. I mean, especially if you had on your bucket list, you're like, number one, be a girl. That checks out as to why you might be trans.
You know what? That might be a sign.
Know what? Maybe I'm trans.
Maybe I should look into that. But I think this is another one of the reasons why this whole ridiculousness in the United States around gender affirming care for minors being banned is that someone like Cassandra was in health class, heard about being trans, and went, wait, actually, that sounds like me.
Health class, that's ambitious.
Well, then again, it found out in middle school, but like it was health class or like from friends or whatever.
Probably from friends. I mean, unless they're in Liberalville.
Yes.
I say as a leftist,
Liberalville. I love it. Hey, more Liberalville. But the point is the kids that aren't trans are hearing that and going, oh, that's interesting.
That's the thing.
And the kids that are trans are like, holy shit.
Again, I could go off on a whole tangent, and I'm just going to keep it brief. I can only have so many tangents, I promise. That, like, teaching someone what it means to be gay, what it means to be trans, whatever. Someone that isn't queer, trans, whatever, is hearing that and going, oh, okay. And they get that information, and then they know what they're seeing when they're out in the world. Having that information for people of all ages just means that the world is going to be a safer place for those minorities. Teaching someone that, oh, sometimes people are born one thing and they transition to another. Or sometimes boys marry boys, and that's totally fine. That will teach them to be able to see it in public and not freak out. And that's why in these conservative areas, they teach you that it's a sin. That we just saw Marjorie Taylor Greene call a drag queen for literally zero reason a child predator when all of her coworkers are
Actually child predators.
allegedly.
Allegedly. Some of them.
Yeah, well,
More
some of
so.
them not alleged, but anyway, yeah. So I mean, that's exactly it. That it just gives people the language to understand the world around them, and that's it. Like if you're not trans, you're not going. You know what? I think I'm gonna do that.
You know what? It's coming from parents, though, that don't want that to be the case. They don't want
Yes.
their child to change, or they don't want their child to be different, or they don't want to have to deal with that sort of thing. And that's the worst part about it. It's that those are the parents that are like, oh, you shouldn't be showing my kids this. Why don't you just let your kid live their lives? See what happens. You know, those are the parents who are freaking out. The ones who are like, I don't want you to change.
Your kid's gonna find it out anyway. That's like not. It's the same thing to me as being like only teaching abstinence. It's like, oh, okay, solve the problem. No more teen pregnancy. Oh, wait.
Oh, wait,
Like,
more teen pregnancy.
That's the thing. When you don't teach it, that's
More of
what's
it.
going to happen. That it's just, yeah, then your kid's going to leave the home and find out, oh, I could have been doing this whole time. My parents have been telling me that I'm going to go to hell if I do this. Now I'm not going to talk to my parents because they.
Yeah, I can't tell them. You hide it.
It just the whole cycle continues. But
Gosh.
back to realizing that you're trans. So
Yes,
so
back to...
those are the moments of clarity that our members have shared with us. And another thing that we've a through line that we've seen in our members is experiences of dysphoria, times when you've realized like what I'm feeling isn't just feeling ugly or feeling a little uncomfortable, it's gender dysphoria. And for me, if we're talking about early on, I think it was Cassie maybe who mentioned that she felt dysphoric about body hair, facial hair, you know, what was between her legs. That was definitely something that I experienced as well. But I remember, I mean, even still, there are times when I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, I feel ugly today. Or like, I feel like I look overweight today, or I have acne or something. And that's one thing. You can be insecure about something, but gender dysphoria is the misalignment between your sex assigned at birth and your gender identity. And for me, that was something that I experienced every single day. It didn't matter if I had the best boy hair, the best boy clothes, the best male friend, like all of that didn't matter. It was that I couldn't exist as a male. So one of our members, Paige, who, again, hi, Paige, is an active member of our vocal training sessions. I mean, most of the people here that we've read names of are in like almost every vocal training session, office hours, makeup lesson. It's so fun. So Paige, very familiar with your work, your life. So Paige says, I began noticing differences between me and other girls. I'd look at them, noticing everything they had, I didn't. I felt jealousy and deep grief, mourning something I'd never had. It felt impossible, like I'd missed out on something precious, something unreachable. Nights were filled with silent tears. Desperate and confused, I remember sneaking onto the computer late at night, searching adult content, desperately trying to understand why I was different, what was so wrong about me, why everyone kept insisting I was a boy and not a girl. I was horrified by what I found, terrified of what I'd grow up to become, what society expected me to be. Driven by panic and sheer desperation, I took a shaving razor into the bathtub, determined to rid myself of the thing that made me so wrong.
This is exactly why we need education for kids. Because if you don't talk to kids and you don't tell them what's going on, this is what happens. And no shame to this person for doing this, but
course.
This is just what happens.
Well, there certainly wasn't any content explaining what it meant to be trans before I came out. Like, this is before Laverne Cox, the cover of Times, before Gigi came out, before all of that. There were those, like, Barbara Walters interviews with, like, I Am Jazz, or those, like, health class kind of movies that would be on YouTube that were from, like, the 90s. They're like, my child is transgender, that kind of thing. And I would watch that.
So real,
and
the voice.
So many of those stories had things, like, I remember distinctly 2 different ones. One of a trans girl who, when she was very young, maybe like 7 or 8, her parents walked in while she was bathing to her with, I'll edit this out for YouTube, but with nail clippers to her, trying to cut it off.
Oh. My
And
toes just
now,
curled.
granted, like, she's okay, and I would have to assume that that was early into her trying to cut it off because, like, her parents told the story, they were crying, but she's fine. So, just so you know. And another story was that this little trans boy, I believe, used to always ask his mom, would you be sad if I died? And she said, of course. And he said, but what if I never existed? And was saying, well, if I never existed, you would have never known that I was alive. You would have never known to miss me. You would have, and this is like a little kid because he was so uncomfortable with who he was and what his body was becoming. This isn't just a whim. This isn't just my child just didn't fit with the boys at school.
And so
This
now
is
they're transitioning.
so much deeper. And while we're on the topic of self-harm, I'll put up a little trigger warning at the beginning of this section, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
While we're on the topic of this, when it comes to dysphoria, self-harm is very, very common amongst trans folks, whether that is through physical self-harm, like cutting, burning, whatever. It could be drug abuse. It could be eating disorders. It could be getting into abusive relationships.
Yeah.
All kinds of self-sabotage, all kinds of ways that people self-harm in a way to almost punish themselves the way that the world has punished them. And for me, I self-harmed for many years. And I suffered from an eating disorder as well. Many people know that on my channel. I struggled with an eating disorder for many years, something that I still live with. I'm in recovery and stuff, but still that's something that sticks in your head. Yeah. And really across the board on all those things, I had some issues. And I think for me, what stemmed that was one, like such a deep disdain for my body and who I was and what was going on with me.
Yeah.
I despised myself so much. And also women are told to take up as little space as possible, to be as small as they are, as they can be, to just be like teeny tiny wayfish, whatever. So I thought if I can starve myself, I'll be more feminine. If I'm as skinny as I possibly can be, I'll look more feminine. Spoiler alert, that is actually kind of the opposite. But that's very, very common. So Paige, I feel you. And I have a feeling that we are going to get into some kind of dark stories in this section. So bear with us. We actually haven't read through any of these. These are all surprises to us. So thank you, Paige, for sharing that.
All right. So one of our members, Ellie, writes, I always hated my genitalia and the body hair the men have. I'd always look in the mirror at myself and not recognize the person looking back at me because it was not the same as what I knew was in the inside. And that caused the biggest dysphoria for me. Looking in the mirror and seeing the wrong person is a very common and challenging experience.
I mean, that's like the definition of gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, what is Reflection in Mulan is kind of the theme song for a lot of trans folks. And same with like Little Mermaid, it's one of the like trans men, trans women anthem, I think, is, who's that girl I see? I'll never have what it takes to be the perfect bride or daughter. Like that is the same through line that a lot of trans folks experience of looking in the mirror and being like, that's not who I'm supposed to see. And it gets better as you progress in your transition. It gets easier and easier with every step, in the same way that it gets worse and worse every step further away. It gets easier. But it is a common experience. And I mean, even for me, I'm like 90% done with my transition, but there are some things that I want to touch up a little bit, like on my face in particular. And I still have that where I look in the mirror and I'm like, well, that's not just not what I want to see, but not who I am. Like, yeah, there are days when I look at the mirror and I'm like, God, I hate this outfit, or I hate that I look like bloated today. But that's a normal problem. When I have breakouts, that's a normal problem.
Yeah.
It's not, this is the wrong person.
One of the reasons why TZone is so special to us is we built support groups inside of it. And so there's a gender dysphoria support group, which is probably one of our most popular, other than gender euphoria celebrations, the other side of it.
It's a great one.
But gender dysphoria, like, I will never fully understand how you feel when that happens. I can do my best to understand it from an outside perspective and be able to help you. But no one other than another trans person will understand what that's like. And that's one of the reasons why it's so valuable to have community and to have support groups around this topic, because another trans person needs to hear what you're saying.
Yes, that's why I appreciate TZone so much, because yes, I'm the owner and founder of TZone, but I'm also a trans person myself. And
Yeah.
I mean, almost made it a little bit selfishly, because I did not have the trans community on my side, have my back. Of course, with my channel and stuff, I have people that support me, but I didn't have people to talk with. I didn't have other trans people to bounce things off of. So when I'm feeling dysphoric, I go to TZone and I post about it. And my sisters over at TZone do the same thing, and we help each other in our comments. We actually just had a really great post. I'll spare the names and stuff, but we had somebody who's transitioning later in life, and she was having a really, really tough time. And she posted on TZone asking for some help, for some guidance. And her comments were just flooded with people giving her support. And she posted the next day saying that it was like night and day, the way that she felt. She was so dysphoric and being like, I'm never going to get to where I want to be because I transitioned this late. And I'm never going to.
Yeah.
But there are so many people that share that experience, and so many people that have been there and gone through it.
Yeah, we have a lot of folks later in life that are on the other side.
Yes,
of what
who
she was
transitioned
feeling.
later in life, and they can say, look at me, I did it, and I'm well, and I'm living my life, and I'm happy. And that makes me, that makes me so happy. And she also said that she found a sister relationship with another member there who transitioned right around the same time, and they're helping one another, and just that's exactly what we made this for.
Yeah.
So,
and we don't see the DMs. We just see how many people are DMing back and forth, and we have these huge number. People are talking to each other all the time behind the scenes. It's amazing to make a real friend.
It is. And I mean, I myself have made real friends on TZone as well that I keep in contact with outside. I have their number in my phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really special. It's a really special platform. So a little self plug, if you are interested in joining TZone, if you want not only education and coaching and all of that, but also friends, if you want to connect with the trans community, that's where you go.
Yeah, an exclusive, protected, application-only community where trans folks are the ones letting other folks in. It's a very safe, it's probably the only place online that is genuinely just for the community.
Yes.
So another one of our members, Valerie, wrote, despite military service, thank you for your service, Valerie.
Thank you.
And a career in the construction industry, I would constantly reject masculinity. I dislike most sports, and this makes every Monday morning meeting just so boring and awkward for me. Yeah, end the corporate sports talk. End it.
Yeah.
I was not like my male peers. I had never understood why I couldn't use a crowded urinal or be in an all-male locker room or even take off my shirt at the beach without extreme discomfort. It all felt so incorrect to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I was that one weird kid in middle school that would change in the storage room or the bathroom stall. I would never.
Didn't we have those showers? We had showers that you could go into that were private showers and the door closed or whatever.
They were called team rooms. There was the team room, at least in middle school. By high school, I transitioned.
Oh, that's true.
I went to the men's locker room in high school, but I did go to the women's. But no, the women's actually had stalls, which is why aren't there stalls in all of them? Why aren't there stalls in all of the
Let's make more inclusive spaces, folks. And
but who wants to see someone's... Okay, anyway.
I'm glad I clicked it there because that's going to be on the private one. That's going to be on TZone.
I can't. But no, that's, first of all, you're not alone there anyway. But also, that's just so real. Especially being Valerie did all the things she was told to do. Valerie went to the military. She did construction, all that. Guess what? You're still trans.
And guess what? That's an even more of that's a great point for folks who think that they can convince their trans child that they're not trans. Because you can force them to go into the military, construction, traditionally male things, watch sports. It's not like they're going to click one day and be like, oh, yeah, they were right the whole time.
And you know what? A lot of people do that to themselves. A lot of our members have said, I told myself if I got a wife and kids that I would just be happy that I would be able to be the man I was supposed to be, get a 9-to-5 job, get a wife, get kids, whatever, and I'll be happy. And that didn't do it for them.
But that's always indoctrination.
Yes.
That's
Well,
someone
that's
else
the thing.
putting that voice in their head.
Yes, that even when they try to do it for themselves, even if they aren't being forced, even if they're like, I'm going to try and force myself into this.
That's right.
That doesn't change who you are as a person. So we're going to take a break there. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about the burden of suppressing these feelings and sort of the overall resolution. So stay with us. When you spend all of your energy suppressing who you truly are, who you know that you are, and trying to cram yourself into this box, that uses so much energy. It is a huge burden on your life. When in addition to regular life problems, if everyone has like family, money, school, work, whatever it is, you also have to deal with suppressing who you are as a person. And yes, there are struggles that come with being an open trans person, but they pale in comparison to trying to live a life that's not your own.
All right. So one of our members, Gwen, wrote, I carried so much self-denial and self-hatred because others taught me from childhood to think of transgender people as mentally deranged at best and demented perverts at worst. This is real now. I don't like how real this is today.
Yeah, everyone's saying that, yeah.
I resisted myself for so long because I knew I was neither of those things. So how could I be transgender? It's so real. For all of those that think being transgender is a choice, I wish they could have seen me in the late night hours of 2.5 decades hating myself more than any foe could ever hate me.
That is so real. I mean, we live in... I don't have anything to say, actually. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, the government probably does hate you as much. It's just so unbelievable right now.
It's the world we're living in right now is absolutely crazy, but you're completely correct, Gwen, that like, yeah, the world we're living in is crazy and it's been crazy, but nothing can compare to the seething hatred that a lot of us internalized for so long. And again, that just adds to the burden of suppressing these feelings.
Absolutely.
Tanya says, I knew I was a girl back then, but out of fear, I hid that girl away from everyone. I did that so well that even I bought that lie for a long, long time. I did all the things that should make for a happy and fulfilling life, had an amazing social life, got married and divorced, built a successful career, bought a home, put down roots where I live, all the things, except one. The one thing I've always needed more than anything, acceptance for myself and for who I am and to live an authentic life. That's exactly it. That you can do all the things. You can have the retirement fund. You can have the hottest wife, 3.5 kids.
The house, the car,
yes, you
the
can
neighborhood.
Have all of that. That doesn't erase your feelings deep down. And I mean, yeah, I was going to go off on a tangent, but we'll save that for another time.
And with that said, we're going to move on to dreams and imagination, which this was an interesting one that Victoria, you said you've had this experience. You didn't know other people had this experience.
Yes. So I didn't realize that like dreaming as another gender was not just a me thing. Like I always kind of experienced it and assumed that that was just me because people dream as themselves usually, or maybe in like a first or third person. But for me, I always dreamt as a girl, and I'd have dreams that I was a girl, and then woke up and would be disappointed. And it was very confusing as well because I was like, what the hell? Like, who the hell am I?
Who is this? Why am I doing this?
Yeah, so it can be really confusing. So we have a few things here, and actually I'll start out with Ebony.
Yeah.
And Ebony she shares something here that a lot of people have related to, which is a film. She says, since childhood, I was always female in my dreams. I guess this is why movies like I Saw the TV Glow had such an emotional impact on me. In my dreams, I was always this beautiful heroine having adventures in this fantasy world, having a separate life, falling in love. I can even clearly remember the details of what I looked like and what this world looked like. And every morning, I'd feel a rush of grief that I was back in this world, back in this uncomfortable boy's body. Yes. First of all, I saw the TV Glow, but I've heard it's a great film for people that are transitioning a little later in life. I've heard there's like, it's never too late is something a lot of people quote from that. So highly suggest y'all check it out if you haven't. We certainly will. But yeah, no, I would wake up from living this life that I always dreamed of. For me, actually, a lot of the time, it would be like me in a city, which is funny now because I don't want to live in a city at all. But I would like me in like a city as a girl living on my own and like a fashion designer and like a model and whatever. And I would wake up and just be so like, guess I'll die. Like I was just so miserable.
You know, Tanya wrote the same thing about waking up and having it be really stressful. They wrote, I live whole other lives in my dreams, and I remember most of them quite clearly. Those lives are happening in places I've never been, with people I've never met, and although it's me in the dream, I'm not me as I am now, but me as a woman, always. They become more frequent since I started coming out. I quite enjoy them, but waking up to the truth of my physical form as it is can be painful. It's difficult to break out of the sadness I'm left with on those mornings. But that's so real.
That is so real. I think people experience that in so many ways. I think if anyone's listening that is not trans and is an ally, you can maybe relate to an extent of having a dream of a deceased loved one and waking up and realizing that they're gone. Or having a dream of, oh my God, this is a great one. Do you know, I mean, really anyone above the age of probably 20 knows this feeling of going through a breakup and waking up and the first thing you remember is heartbreak.
You're like, I'm not with them
and
anymore.
Waking up and like feeling fine for like a second and then remembering what the reality is. And that is a great explanation of kind of that feeling of being like, no, like, but that's every single day. And then also having that in addition to the heartbreak or whatever you're going through.
Yep.
Yes. So you're not alone there. We had quite a few people submit some stories. Those are just some that we've chose to share, but yeah, no, it's not just you. It's not just me. It's a pretty common thread in the trans community.
We had to whittle down these stories so much. Over 20 people gave us stuff and we had to like find little quotes.
Yes.
Like it was unbelievable how many people had similar experiences.
100%. And we've got some banked for another time too. Don't you worry. So in the wake of talking about the burden of hiding yourself and waking up from dreams and feeling just destroyed, we have the beauty and the gender euphoria, the relief of transition acceptance, accepting yourself as a trans person, coming out to your loved ones and embarking on this journey of transition. You know, being trans is not a choice. Transitioning and deciding to put yourself first is.
And it includes a lot of other smaller choices. Like it's many choices that you have to put together.
Many
it's a journey.
Choices. A lot of ultimatums for a lot of people as well. It's not an easy choice. So we have some really great stories here from some of our members about, you know, waking up from almost a catatonic state and realizing, oh my God, I'm alive again. Or just feeling like yourself for the first time in forever. I know for me, the relief came. The first relief, of course, was coming out to my family and coming out socially and being able to embark on that transition. Like that was a great...
They all know.
Yes, I was like, okay, I'm on the right track. And I remember getting my first shot of blockers at 14 and feeling like, okay, I don't have to... I'm like even getting emotional thinking about it.
They stopped it.
Yes, of like, I no longer have to wake up in fear because I'm done progressing that way. That was such a big relief for me. But for me, it's something that really stands out as the most special moment in my transition. I have to film something after this.
So with that said, I'll jump in here in a moment.
So something that does stand out to me in my transition is when I got bottom surgery and I was able to get all of my stuff, like all of my dressings and stuff removed after surgery. And I was able to look at myself naked in the mirror for the first time and see myself. That's not something I had ever experienced. I had bits and pieces as I progressed in my transition, but I'd never been able to just see myself. And yeah, that was just really special. So we have some great stories from our members.
Absolutely.
I'll get us kicked off with Carrie Ann, actually. Carrie Ann said, I had no desire at all to live the life of a man. I wanted/needed to pull up from within me more of who I was. I felt I was so limited and just had to express more. I needed to share and experience that which had no place as a man. I started HRT and it's been an improving trajectory ever since. So I'm not going back, not that I could, because that part of me has been incorporated into the new me. I love that. I could not willingly take up the straitjacket again after waking from catatonia.
Oh,
That
that's
is
right.
so real. And that's so true that like what Rain was saying about Ghost in the Shell, great anime if you haven't seen it, is yes, you can sacrifice like giving up the old you, but ultimately it's you. It's just the more real you. You're incorporating who you were into who you are now. I incorporate the pain that I felt before I transitioned, every day waking up in fear. I incorporate that into who I am today. And in fact, that's what birthed TZone. That's why I made this in the first place.
Yeah.
To spread that feeling to other people, that I carry that pain with me and I put it to use. And I think that's what a lot of trans folks do. And that's a lot of the stories that we've gotten here from our members.
Absolutely. And to close it off, we have Kaylee here who shares something that their wife tells her. So listen to what my wife tells me, and maybe there is something in it that might help. We can't live in the past. Be thankful that you came out when you did. Chin up, big smile. Let's enjoy the future.
I know that's right, Kaylee. That's wonderful.
That.
Kaylee actually has some wonderful stories about her and her wife as well. So we really hope you will enjoy this episode of the TZone podcast. Remember that transition is a journey. It's not a race. And that, yeah, some people will say like, I wish I transitioned 20 years ago. Yeah, the best time to transition might have been 20 years ago. Guess what the second best time is? Now. If that's who you are and you're certain that's who you are, second best time is now. So I hope this resonated with some of you. If you'd like to join the conversation, then please head over to transgenderzone.com where you can join, become a member. We have a flourishing community of trans-only members. We have live vocal coaching sessions twice a week. We have makeup tutorials and office hours starring me, Victoria Rose. We have education, resources, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more, go over to transgenderzone.com.
And if you're watching this on a Monday, tomorrow, Tuesday, Victoria is going to be doing her office hours. On Thursday, we have vocal training.
True. Actually,
on Saturday, we have more vocal training. Sunday, community circle. I mean, there's events going on all week. So whenever you join, there's something for you.
Yes. If you're watching this the day that it's released, which will be on a Monday, on the first Tuesday of every month, I do a live makeup tutorial where you can ask questions, do it with me, whatever. So if you're watching, go ahead and head over because tomorrow I will be hosting my makeup session. So go ahead and join us over there. And thank you all so much for joining us. Make sure that you rate us wherever you get your podcast. Give us a thumbs up, comment down below. And thanks so much for joining us. And until we see you next time, take care of yourself. And we'll see you in the community.